going on, everybody? This is Dr. Chris Featherstone once again for another feather tip. So I was doing some research as far as just why people leave the church. I was really interested in doing that and thought about it. And what I saw was there was many reasons why people leave the church. I have no interest in going to church anymore. And one of the biggest things, one of the biggest reasons of why people don't go to church anymore is just get out of the habit. And because they get out of the habit, other things replace the habit. And then after that, their interest in going to church actually continues to decline. And that's actually quite unfortunate. But they can see themselves getting into a habit of going to church and having church be a big role in their lives. Something happens, it could be hurt, it could be location, it could be just interest, it could be work, being tired, whatever it is, they get out of the habit and the habit continues to lessen and lessen and reduce from their life. And so here are some thoughts when it comes to breaking habits and how habits actually can be a really, really good thing. Here's the thing, I think one of the biggest things, and I've seen this from just talking to people from a ministry standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, and even from an experiential standpoint, I've seen how it is of people making it a routine, making church going a routine, but not a decision. One of the things when it comes to church going, or when it comes to just decisions, period, when it comes to making or processing things. So it's a term in your brain called, a part of your brain called the basal ganglia, and that actually deals with pattern development, emotions, and so forth. And so when you get a habit, it actually triggers a type of pattern development, a type of emotion that actually is affiliated with that habit. So what happens is the part of your brain is called the prefrontal cortex, and the prefrontal cortex actually deals with a lot of things. It deals with memory in a sense, but definitely more like decision making, anticipation of events, adaptation, things like that is what the prefrontal cortex deals with mostly. So when it comes to routine that's not based on decisions and a positive stimulation, what happens is your prefrontal cortex, the decision-making process becomes a bit dormant. It becomes kind of put to the side in a sense. So when you're doing things out of routine more than decision or the excitement that comes with that routine is fine, but there still has to be a zeal in that routine and that decision-making process. So what happens is once the prefrontal cortex, or once the functionality of the decision-making process becomes dormant, you're only relying on the habit or the pattern, the basal ganglia part of that. So what happens is something happened and it creates a different pattern in your mind of what you're deciding to do. Like for instance, I was a personal trainer for nearly a decade. If you are in the habit of working out, if you create a habit of working out, what happens is if the decision process or the excitement or the anticipation of the event where the prefrontal cortex operates very optimally, once that becomes dormant, your zeal for working out becomes simply a routine. And when it's dormant or sleep, as far as the decision-making process, then it's easier to get out of the habit of working out because you're replacing that memory with eating Oreos or sitting on the couch or wanting to go to sleep or whatever. So the replacement of that becomes a new type of paradigm or a new type of thought process, and you're deciding to do other things and the habit is broken away. And that's the same functionality even in relationships. That happens when it comes routine. The love and the drive and the excitement, it becomes much lower, and it becomes reduced because it's just a habit at that time. It's just your decision-making process is kind of drifting away. So, and the thing is with that, you don't want to get to the point of causing that to become a state of anhedonia, which is the losing interest or pleasure, a heavy reduction or altogether. And that actually happens. That's actually quite a huge component in depression, is anhedonia. So you don't want that to happen. You don't want a negative thought to be triggered with the two, and it's easier to look at those things and say, okay, well, these negative things came from that habit or that pattern, so I've switched it over. Then you start to justify the reason why you have left a particular good habit. The reason why I stopped working out is because I was working too much and my schedule got hectic. The reason why I stopped going to church is because Pastor so-and-so said this, or my work schedule, I start working on Sundays. You start to justify the change in the thought pattern. You start to mitigate that in your head. So that's one of the biggest reasons why people stop going to church. Studies show is because they lose the habit. So I encourage you to not let the zeal or not let the decision making of going to church be dormant. Don't allow that to be dormant. Don't allow that to just kind of be in sleep mode and kind of fall aside. Don't just go to church and do the routine. I've seen this so many times within the community of believers where people get to the point where they just are going to church because it's a routine thing to do. It's just a pattern thing to do. They know they get up on Sundays or Saturdays or Thursdays or Wednesdays or whatever it is. They know to get up or go from home or go to church or wherever you are, and to just do the pattern of going to church. We know what happens on Sundays. We get up, we go to church. It's a routine. But this is what I encourage you to do, to stay in that habit. Just like I'll encourage you, from a fitness standpoint, to stay in the habit of working out. Make the decision to work out. Don't make it just a routine thing to do. Make a decision. Put a decision behind that. Stamp it with a decision. It's very important. Stamp it with a decision. Stamp a routine with the decision to do it. Because when it comes to habits, they can break. If they're so routine and the decision making, the prefrontal cortex becomes dormant, it becomes less strong. The process becomes weaker and it becomes easier to drift away from. So you definitely don't want to do that. Again, like I said, when it comes to fitness, make a decision. Say, I'm excited to watch this show when I'm working out tonight. I'm excited to listen to this song. I'm excited to listen to this podcast, while I'm doing cardio or while I'm lifting weights, listening to this song. It's this new, Christian rap song that just came out by KB or something like that. I'm excited to listen to it to keep me energized while I'm lifting weights. Put a decision process with that. Same thing with church. I'm excited about the new series coming on this week. I'm excited that this series has a lot to do with my personal life, and I'm really excited about it. There's a guest speaker coming, I heard. I'm really excited because I listened to him on podcast. Put a decision behind those things, and the drift away process will be a lot less optional, because you'll have the opportunity to put a decision behind it, and you're anticipating an event. That's one of the huge functional aspect of the prefrontal cortex. You don't want to make that dormant. You don't want to put that to sleep. Otherwise, like I said, you'll be more prone to break a habit. So keep the habit of wanting to go to church, because what happens is that when you drift away from church, you'll have a bigger proclivity to make excuses of why you don't go. So, like I told you before, if you drift away from going to a certain restaurant, that doesn't make you stop going to restaurants. Like there was this Mexican spot that I loved to go, and the food was really bad, and the service was really bad, and I stopped going to Mexican restaurants completely. No, I'm going to find another restaurant. So if a church is actually getting me to the point of it's not sound, it's not based on bibliocentric, and most importantly, Christocentric or Christ-centric principles. Hey, look, maybe you should consider leaving, because a lot of times people stay in the habit even with that. They stay into churches because they're in the habit of continuing to go to church. They're not necessarily making a decision. They're not stamping a routine with a decision. They're just doing it out of habit. And then, they just get tired of the habit because the church has been kind of, very unsound, biblical for a while. And then all of a sudden you're just like, okay, well, I'm tired of going to this church. I've been dedicated to this church for so long, but I stopped wanting to go here for a long time because it wasn't based on sound biblical exegesis. But you got in a habit so much that was a routine. That became a routine. The prefrontal cortex, the decision-making process, became dormant. So yeah, that's my encouragement for you. Is just to really continue to have the decision-making process be very, very, very important. Make it very glaring. Make it very relevant in the process of you continuing to go to church. All right, and don't drift away. Don't just make it a habit, but put a decision, stamp a decision with that habit. Be excited about going to church. I've been at my church. This is my 9th year at my particular church, and I love going to my church, and I get excited every single Sunday when I wake up to go to my church, because I love the community. And going to church it's important, man. A lot of community psychologists, church going is actually a very, very strong component in community psychology nowadays. Social justice is neighborhoods and things like that is real big with community psychologists, but church is actually starting to develop into a very, very important component, especially over the past decade or so, with community psychology, and realizing how important it is for churches to meet together. It's strengthening the community, and that is very, very important. And I affirm that wholeheartedly of how church is very, very important in helping with motivation, accountability, growth, certainly growth. And community psychologists are starting to understand the importance of church going when it comes to those components, when it comes to the psychological and just overall personal well-being of people. So there's many, many benefits of going to church, and I have seen them and I affirm them. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dr. Chris Featherstone. I'm giving you another feather tip. You be blessed. Love you guys.